Travis Anderson, welcome to the MSUM Dragons Podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing good. How you doing?
Hanging in there, enjoying a little someone else time, other than love my family to death. But it's good to see some other faces from work. So
Yeah, no doubt. I hear you.
it's good to see you, man. How are things going for you?
They're going pretty good. We're just trying to adjust. The whole both parents working from home, and my wife's working a ton right now because she's kind of working with some massive layoffs and stuff through her company. And so, we've got two school age kids that we're trying to homeschool, and then I got two that are younger than school age. So it's kind of running a homeschool and a daycare all in one.
Yeah, no, we just have our one, and she's a lot to handle. Taking shifts with two people who work in MSUM and trying to support each other when we need an hour here or an hour there to get a couple things done. But it's just a new normal. And, we wanted to get you in on the podcast to talk a little bit about that exactly. The new changes and things as far as one of the big pieces that we talk about on the podcast is, the Dragon Athletics seeks out to be more than a game. But one of our other key pillars is developing our people and how passionate we are about that. And you are instrumental to that. So how have you continued to find innovative ways to develop our Dragons during this COVID time?
Yeah, it's definitely a tough situation, and it's hard to do. But I don't know if it's fortunate or not, but everyone's kind of in the same boat. So there's no real competitive edge in the country at any division. So, when the whole thing started, we came back from spring break and found out that we weren't going to go back to classes. And so what I first did was I connected with Coach Cox and Coach Tinker, and I said, the next 6 to 8 weeks, whatever we have planned out with the teams, let's get them their workouts. So we got them all their lifting, their running, everything that we had planned to do in Nemzik, in our weight room and in training them, because the gyms were still open and people were still able to do stuff. And then you started to kind of catch wind that everything was going to close. And so then we kind of reconnected and said, all right, let's start to create some workouts that are, with little to no equipment that they can still accomplish and still make sure they're getting things done. And we felt like the easiest way right away was to put it up on D2L. And then also talking with Mr. Peters, that was one thing we wanted to do because they all had to go to D2L for their academics. And so hopefully they kind of had one spot to go get everything. And so we just tried to make a plan, try to make a consistent plan like they would, normally have with us. So we made 4 weeks of training. We did 3 days a week because we were trying to balance the get them stuff right away, and also to make sure that we have some decent, training, that we weren't just throwing a bunch of exercises in there. We wanted to make sure that we're still developing them in training and not just doing a bunch of random exercises. And so we balanced that. It probably, could have been a little bit better looking back on it, but I think for the most part, it was pretty solid. And then just tried to reach out to all the sport coaches. Each strength coach reached out to their head sport coach and said, what do we need right now? And at that time, we didn't have the virtual Kara. And, and everyone was trying to, everyone was trying to figure it out as we go. And then the virtual Kara came along, and again, every sport coach was a little bit different. We reached out to them, and some wanted their own workouts for their own team, and some wanted just what was ever on D2L. And so we've tried to do our best to cater to each sport, and then just trying to communicate with the athletes is what we've been doing lately, I guess, in a nutshell right now.
Right, and that's a great step-by-step. What are some of the student athletes saying throughout this process? Because early on, these are competitors. These are people who want to go out and give it their all and their best, and all of a sudden it's ripped away. And not just the competition, but just the ability to grow and get better. What are some things that the student athletes have been telling you just about their desire to continue to grow and continue to work out?
Right. The number one question that I get is, when are we going to get back in the gym? And
Yeah.
it's tough because nobody knows, and I try to give them a best case scenario and a worst case scenario. But at the end of the day, I tell them, I don't know, this isn't really up to anybody right now. So the other things that I'm hearing is, there's a big variety of what people have to train with. There's some athletes that have, their parents might have a home gym in their garage, or I know some people they had like a squat rack and a setup at their lake that they let them bring back to their house. And then there's people that don't have anything. And, you're the people that had those initial workouts, that what we normally do in the weight room, they want to do those workouts because they're able to. And I don't want to hold them back from doing it. And so there are some teams that are doing a mixture of both. And I've had some FaceTime calls, lot of text messages, some phone calls of, how can I get this exercise done without equipment? And so I've had people FaceTime me, and we're walking around their house going, oh, there's a table right there. You can do inverted row on that table. If it's sturdy enough, because
Yeah.
I've seen some videos on social media, and I'm sure most people haven't posted the accidents that have happened. But, people are like, oh, I can hook up a band to, this, whatever, my basement that's unfinished, and do something, and all of a sudden it breaks or something, or they're pulling towards their face and it snaps back at them. And so it's trying to find that balance too, to tell them, you got to make sure that this is something that's safe as well. But that, just trying to find the motivation at times. Each sport's been a little bit different with how they're approaching it. Some of a set schedule of, we're going to do this at this time. Some, we're going to lift in the morning, we're going to condition in the afternoon. Some are, we're going to, some winter sports maybe treat it like the summer, and you just got to get it done on your own if you're not training with us. I've had a few people tell me, like, just straight up, I'm having a hard time with my eating because I get bored during the day, or I have free time. And what are some tips, or what can I do to help me with, I'm not putting on too much bad weight or something like that. And so just trying to guide them and motivate them. And those are people usually I'm checking in on a weekly basis, and just saying, how's it going?
So you're organizing group workouts. You are doing personalized training FaceTimes and kind of equipment planning. You're being the nutritionist in some ways, counselor, I'm sure, in some ways. I mean, right now, we can't shoot hoops or throw a football on the field or swim in the pool or run around the track even. So the only thing we can do right now is really through Travis Anderson. I mean, it's really true. I mean, how does it kind of feel to everyone kind of looking at you for guidance, as well as to keep growing and to keep that? I see it as a big piece of hope for the eventual end of this someday, and what you're doing is a big part of it. What does it feel to kind of be instrumental in that growth?
It's something that I'm, at times I feel like I'm not doing the best job that I could. But at the same time, it's something that I kind of pride myself on. I would say the most stressful part for me is trying to manage my family with those needs too, because I'm in charge of educating them now, you know what I mean? And then, I've got an infant at home, and then I've got a 4-year-old too that obviously the infant needs attention, but the 4-year-old needs attention too. But, going back to the athletes, it's what I've told them is, when we get back to training, right now you have to make sure you're taking care of everything that you possibly can with your training, with your diet. And a lot of it comes down to setting a schedule. But when we get back to training, especially with the fall sports, it's going to be really goofy. We have to cater to the people that have taken care of their business a little bit, in a sense of they're staying in shape. They've been training the best that they can. And there's going to be a middle group that have done, most stuff, maybe not everything. And then there's going to be a group that haven't done anything. And, I've talked with a lot of strength coaches in the last couple of weeks, or even sat in on webinars of interviews and things like that. And the common theme is that, when we get into conditioning, especially for the fall sports, there's going to be a safety issue, where you're going to have to, the first week to two, figure out, all right, where are we at, from a training standpoint, what type of shape are we in? And then where can we go? But you're going to have to pull out the people that haven't prepared themselves properly, out of condition, so somebody doesn't get hurt, or even worse. And then we have to set a separate plan up for those guys or girls, and try to make sure that we can try to catch them up without getting injured. So I have a hard time working without an end goal in mind, because that's just, I guess, what a strength coach does. You give us a goal, and we have to, do we have 8 weeks to do it? Do we have 6 weeks to do it? Do we have 10 weeks? Whatever it is. And you try to set up that process. And right now it's hard, because people can say what they're doing. But we've also had conversations where I've talked to either an assistant coach or a head coach, and we're talking about an athlete, and they're telling me one thing, and they're telling the assistant coach that they're maybe struggling with something else, or, we're getting two different stories. And so then it's a phone call to the athlete, and like, just telling them, hey, be honest with me, what's going good, what's not going well. And let's try to figure this out and try to make things the best way we can. I don't know if that answered your question, but I kind of went on a rant there.
No, it did. And I think a lot of it is just doing the best you can with what you can control. I mean, that's the bottom line. Is
100%.
A lot of these things right now in all of our worlds is out of our control. Our family time is out of our, is a new thing. Our routines are gone. Trying to find new routines, trying to find new normals, and doing the best with what we've got. I've seen some fun pictures on social media of some individuals getting real handy with a few racks I've seen. What else have you seen that's been kind of the most creative ways that Dragons have gotten a workout in?
It's like I said, we've done some FaceTimes where we're picking out equipment, but I mean, backpacks filling up, I've seen people filling up their backpacks with tools or bricks or books, filling buckets with water or sand or bricks, rocks, stuff like that. I've talked to athletes that are like, yeah, I've got a little brother, a little sister that I press over my head, a couple times. It's the only thing I have. They might have a playground with monkey bars or something, where I've seen, your pull-ups and chin-ups, you're up there, or they'll pull themselves up and then put their feet up on the monkey bars and do an inverted row that way. And then, I've had a few people actually text me and show me that they've built a rack out of wood, which is, they're like, hey, went to Menards and built this with my dad or my buddy or whatever, and had equipment or bought equipment. I know a lot of the equipment places are scrambling right now because people are ordering so much stuff, and they're having a hard time keeping up.
Yeah, and all the challenges that have been out there, I've seen a few of those. I just got challenged yesterday to run a mile, so that's going to be fun. I've seen some push-up challenges, other than kicking around a toilet paper roll for the soccer team. I've seen a lot of those challenges, and that just helps maybe lighten up the workouts, include some more people, maybe push beyond the normal workouts. Those are great things. And, it feels like, like kind of like your point earlier, when you go into summer break or any sort of extended break, there's going to be some period of time, because we don't require athletes to stay here all summer, that they're going to lose some, or some might go above and beyond and gain and make some strides. And it just feels like when you extend that time period out, like this is going to kind of force, especially for the fall and winter, getting caught up is going to be a transition for everybody. But I think the one thing that we can hold on to and hope for is any work that we put in now. So think about what you can say to the people who aren't doing it right now. What is your message to them to just do something now to make sure that when we do get back into it, that we're healthy, we're safe, and we're growing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's kind of like I said earlier, is when we do get back to the normal, coaches and strength coaches are going to want to push, and a lot of the athletes are going to want to too. And if they're not prepared, the number one importance in all of it is the safety of the athlete. And if they're not ready, and they've proven they're not ready, we have to pull them out of a workout. And that's not something that I'm going to enjoy doing. But the people that are I've talked to a few of the fall sports and the athletes, and I think this is going to be a time where you're going to see the biggest separation in a conference of teams that are preparing right now are going to have a head up versus anybody else. If you have majority of your team or all of your team doing what they're supposed to be doing with the best that they can, they're going to be so much ahead of the game than the other teams in the conference that might not be doing what they're supposed to be doing. And this is a time.
It's funny because we at the beginning we talked about, no one has a competitive advantage. We're all going through the same thing.
Right.
But what you're saying right now is it's not about what we can do as a competitive advantage. It's kind of like the attitude of how we attack the opportunity that we have.
100%. And it's being consistent every single day. And it's really no different than what we talk about in the weight room or training. And coaches talk about at practice. It's right now you have to control what you can control. And that's, your attitudes and your choices that you're going to make every day. And it's going to separate you one way or the other.
Well, let's hope that we create a little separation for Team MSUM. And, thank you for helping us out, the entire department and all of our athletes, giving them a plan, giving them something to work on, because it's so important, in the psychology of everything, to have a project. And for all of our athletes, projects was preparing for games that might not, have existed and been taken away. So to have this project that you've been giving them to work on their body and find ways during all of this at home is invaluable to just mental stability upon the physical stability of just working towards, it might not be a clear goal, but there is a goal of just getting better every day, as we talk about all the time. So thank you for providing that, and your team especially. I don't want to leave them out for helping provide that structure, because that's important to have that whole group and your whole group. And thank you for your time today on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Stay strong, stay in the fight, and go Dragons.